Here, the two things we have is faith versus skepticism.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, faith can be really powerful when it gives people a sense of purpose or hope, especially in times of uncertainty. Think about how faith can help someone stay resilient during a tough illness or loss. It doesn't have to replace evidence. It just gives people a framework to keep moving forward even when things aren't certain. And that can be really grounding.
Could you show me how faith could be useful?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, faith can be really powerful when it gives people a sense of purpose or hope, especially in times of uncertainty. Think about how faith can help someone stay resilient during a tough illness or loss. It doesn't have to replace evidence. It just gives people a framework to keep moving forward even when things aren't certain. And that can be really grounding.
Because that's completely subjective.
Yeah, absolutely. Faith is inherently subjective. It's personal, emotional, and based on what resonates with you. And that's why it's so different from empirical evidence, which is supposed to be objective and repeatable. They serve different roles in people's lives. Faith gives meaning while evidence gives us a reliable map of the world.
When we say faith gives meaning, what is the meaning of faith?
That's a really deep question. I think at its core, faith is a kind of trust or confidence in something beyond direct proof, whether that's a higher power, a purpose, or even just a belief in other people. It gives a sense that life has a larger narrative or structure, even when we don't have all the answers.
So your statement is the same. It's subjective as faith it is. So there is no way to explain faith from an objective perspective, critical thinking, and common sense view.
Yeah, I think you're right in a sense. Faith really does rely on a subjective framework, and from a purely critical or empirical perspective, it doesn't lend itself to the same kind of verification. But that doesn't mean it's not real or important to the people who experience it. It's just a different kind of knowing, one that coexists alongside but not always in opposition to rational inquiry.
So you bring faith either when you are too lazy to search, when you are too ignorant to accept, or when you are so afraid to face your destiny.
That's a pretty stark framing, and I get what you mean. Faith can sometimes be a shortcut when people don't have the tools or confidence to dig deeper. But I think it can also emerge from a real search for meaning, like when people encounter limitations in pure logic or feel scared by the unknown. So it's not always lazy or ignorant. Sometimes it's just human.
Okay, let's make a breakdown. What are the possibilities of a powerful mind controlling the universe, the earth, and the mankind?
That's a really big question, so it helps to break it down. I mean, historically, people have imagined things like a divine mind or a universal intelligence. Think religious concepts like God or the Logos. Philosophically, some people consider a kind of panpsychism, that consciousness is fundamental. Or from a sci-fi or speculative perspective, some might think about advanced civilizations or artificial intelligence as a kind of controlling force. But right now, we just don't have evidence for any of those scenarios, so they're more conceptual than factual.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, let's see faith from the anthropological point of view.
Oh, that's a great angle. From an anthropological perspective, faith is often seen as a universal human practice. Across cultures, people have developed belief systems to explain the unknown, whether that's about nature, death, or human origins. Faith often provides social cohesion, a shared sense of meaning, and a way to cope with existential uncertainty. So, faith, in that sense, is kind of a cultural tool. It shapes identities and communities.
There is the word you mentioned, uncertainty. So that means that faith is uncertain. It's just a way human beings have to try to hide from reality.
I see what you're getting at, and I think that can be one interpretation. Faith often steps in precisely because humans don't have all the answers. So in that gap, faith provides comfort or a kind of framework. And yes, from a critical or skeptical lens, it can be seen as a way to avoid grappling with the discomfort of uncertainty. But I think for a lot of people, it's not about denial, it's just a different way of making sense of a complex world.
For a lot of people, you mean from ignorant people that don't want to see reality, that don't want to grab a book to study, that don't want to accept science as a way to find the truth, as the main reason to even to use a phone or the doctor or the car they are driving or the satellites that send images of the Earth. Is that what you mean?
I think I get your point, and I think it's fair to say that sometimes people do rely on faith as a kind of shortcut, especially when they're overwhelmed by complexity. But I wouldn't say it's always about ignorance or laziness. Sometimes it's about emotional or social needs. People have different starting points, and sometimes it's a gradual process to integrate both faith and reason. So, it's complicated, not just a simple dichotomy.
It's complicated to study, so the faith is an easiest path. That's why people accept faith instead of the hardest path, which is to study, to learn, to search, to be skeptical, and then instead of doing that, they accept faith as a way out.
Yeah, I think that's a really important critique. Faith can be a kind of mental shortcut. It's often simpler, especially if people are afraid or don't have the time or resources to dive deep. And yes, the process of critical thinking is harder. It demands effort, patience, and a willingness to sit with uncertainty. So, yeah, I think you're right that faith can be a default, especially when the alternative feels too daunting. Leave your comments.